Now in the studio is former Assistant U.S. Attorney David Weinstein. David, thanks for being here. So much happening in one afternoon. Before we get started to talk about it, let's listen to what President Trump had to say this afternoon.
Paul Manafort's a good man. He was with Ronald Reagan. He was with a lot of different people over the years, and I feel very sad about that. It doesn't involve me, but I still feel, it's a very sad thing that happens. This has nothing to do with Russian collusion. This started as Russian collusion. This has absolutely nothing to do. This is a witch hunt, and it's a disgrace. But this has nothing to do what they started out, looking for Russians involved in our campaign. There were none. I feel very badly for Paul Manafort.
Okay, David, so the president distancing himself a little bit from him, and also not at all mentioning Cohen. And Cohen's alleging that President Trump basically advised him to break the law and that he did so at his direction. So what do we make of all this?
Well, let's back up a little bit. The president sounded like a friend who was testifying on behalf of another friend who's just been convicted and is acting as a character witness. He's not certainly acting as the president of the United States. As far as Cohen goes, it's not just Cohen who's alleged these things. He's pled guilty to an information that was filed that specifically talks about a candidate for public office who urged and encouraged him to pay this money, diverting campaign finances. So it's not just Cohen who's saying it. To wrap it all together, the last comments you heard from Manafort's lawyers were that their client's exploring his options. You have to feel that the circumstances are starting to get tighter and tighter and tighter around the person who's in the middle of all of this. And it's not just one person's word anymore. It's the word of a number of different people and the word of documents that support these allegations. Looking at the verdict that came out in the Manafort trial, the counts that he was convicted on, those were counts where Manafort himself did something. For the most part, the tax fraud allegations, the failure to report his foreign bank accounts, and then the two specific instances of bank fraud. Perhaps the jury didn't think that Gates was all that credible, but the special prosecutor doesn't need Gates to go further with where he's going to be going in Washington in a month, where Manafort's got another trial coming up. So it's all seems to be unrelated to each other, but yet it's all focusing in on something in the middle.
Okay, well, Paul Manafort and Michael Cohen are now convicted felons. We know this. And it all came down in this afternoon. But the president has said this has nothing to do with Russian meddling in the election, that this is an overreach by the special prosecutor. You were a prosecutor. Is that a fact? Is that true?
It's not an overreach. So here's the way that it works. The prosecutor is given a task, and in this case, the special prosecutor was told, investigate these allegations of collusion and meddling in the election that took place involving the Russians. So he begins to investigate. And what did he do and what did he find out? He found out that mixed in within all of this were some other criminal law violations. It's not his job to ignore them. It's not any prosecutor's job to ignore them. It's their job to simply gather the facts, and then if another crime comes up, to pass it off to somebody else who can be tasked with investigating and prosecuting that. And that's exactly what he did with Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen is not being prosecuted by the special prosecutor. He's being prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, and that's a person who he cut a deal with. There's nothing in his agreement that says he's cooperating with the special prosecutor, or for that matter, with the prosecutor. He's pled guilty to his conduct because his words, he is guilty. Manafort, well, they uncovered some tax violations that he was committing and failure to declare foreign bank accounts and committing bank fraud. The special prosecutor is not going to stick his head in the ground and overlook that. He investigated that as well. But it all goes back to what he started off doing and what his assignment was. And the fact that the president is trying to deflect from that assignment doesn't change the fact that these other crimes existed. Doesn't change the fact that there have now been closing in on a dozen people who have either pled guilty or been found guilty and are somehow related either directly or indirectly to what happened during that election.
So, David, we heard the president, what he had to say about Manafort as he got off of Air Force One earlier this afternoon. You called it basically acting as a character witness for Manafort. Does any of this signal, perhaps, about a pardon in the future for Manafort? And also, what about Cohen?
I think we're past the signals. I think that everybody knows that he intends to or is going to try to pardon these individuals once their convictions become final. With Manafort, he's entitled to take an appeal of those convictions that were entered in the Eastern District of Virginia, take it up to the Court of Appeals. He's still got another trial pending. His conviction is not going to become final for quite some ways down the road. Now, we're at a midterm here in the election process. We don't know what's going to happen in 2 years. It may take Manafort's conviction that long to become a final conviction. Could he pardon him then? Well, if he's not the president, he can't. And as for Cohen, if his sentence is entered and he's looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 years to 5 years by agreement between the parties, once his conviction becomes final, if he pardons him, double jeopardy doesn't apply anymore. He could be forced to testify with no Fifth Amendment right anymore, and someone could put him in front of a grand jury.
So you're saying the president cannot pardon Paul Manafort until all those appeals are exhausted?
He's got to have a conviction that's become final. That's what a pardon is. Right now, he hasn't even been sentenced. His conviction isn't final until he exhausted his appellate rights. Now, if Manafort decides he's not going to appeal his conviction because he hopes that there'll be a pardon, well, then his conviction is final and he can seek a pardon.
All right, David, thank you very much. A lot of interesting news happening today. Appreciate you joining us and breaking it down.
All right.